There's also been some studies in humans to study food addiction. And Nicole Avena, Ashley Gearhart and Schulte researched the foods that were most addictive. And what happened was, again, they got a group of participants and they all completed the YFAS. And they were shown a list of 35 foods ranging in various ways, in differences in glycemic load, fat content, whether they were processed or unprocessed foods. And the participants were asked to rate each food on a Likert scale. And a Likert scale is just 1 to 7, a range of scoring. 1 was how the food was unproblematic for them, and 7 was very problematic. And problematic meant they had difficulty cutting down the consumption of that food, or they were losing control and overeating that food. And then the researchers ranked all the foods in order of most problematic to least problematic. And what the study showed was that not all foods are associated with addictive-like eating behaviour. The 5 most problematic foods, and this is not surprising: pizza, chocolate, cookies, well, biscuits to us, ice cream and chips, that's crisps. And so they were the most difficult to stop eating. And the least problematic were cucumber, plain brown rice, carrots and beans. And that's not green beans, that's like beans as in, white beans and lentils, those sort of beans, and broccoli. So people could easily stop eating those foods, but the other ones they couldn't. And so the conclusions that these researchers drew were that highly processed food may share some of the same properties as drugs of abuse, because the foods that were most problematic also had a high glycemic load. And you learnt about glycemic index from Marty's talk, and glycemic load is about the quantity of food. So it takes into account, it's a calculation that takes into account the glycemic index and the quantity, and you come up with a score which is the glycemic load. And food that has a high glycemic load has a high dose of glucose, and it's giving the brain a big hit. So there's a rapid rate of absorption of sugar in the brain. And so, as I just said, foods with a high glycemic load were especially problematic for people with a food addiction who had high scores on the YFAS, because of this high rate of glucose and the rate of the rate and the dose of glucose. What was not associated with food addiction were unprocessed food. So unprocessed food was not a problem for anyone.